live, and then it's real. All right, good. Save that for later. I bet. Looks so familiar. All right, I think we live. Bet. Make sure everything working on my end, because I'm excited about this one. Okay, bet. That's working. Check Facebook. Check all the networks. See if we cooking. We cooking. Check LinkedIn. See if we cooking. Stop. Just for a little bit. All right, we're cooking. Let's go. Ugh, so much AI content. Most of it's garbage. All right, let's go. All right, so Monday, I started reading the Stripe article that came out, where they came out with Minnions, Stripe one-shot end-to-end coding agent. And I thought, man, it has a lot of similarities to what I've been focused on lately. And that's kind of grounding when the AI is writing code for you, just keeping it grounded. But then the systems that you're running it through. As much as I like all these new things that are happening, like Open, Claw, and stuff, I think the thing that would make it amazing is being able to ground the systems before it writes code. So having an agent that can talk to other things that are grounded. Um, and one of the things that they do is they're in chat. You can see here they're in their chat and they're saying, "Hey, go do this thing." So it abstract the interface away from the code. So devs aren't necessarily living in um, their IDE environment anymore. And I think that's one of the one of the most interesting changes we're probably going to see in the next 3 months or so, is that developers aren't necessarily in their IDs anymore. I know I don't really open it as much as I am just confirming that um, the code has been committed. That's about it. And just double checking a few things, but for the actual writing process, not much. I don't really open it anymore. If anything, I spend a lot of my time in the terminal windows. And so I guess what I'm going to do here today is we're going to take an idea from a buddy of mine. We had this conversation about starting these agents, and I'm going to take some of the concepts from this Minions conversation to see if we can like one shot the entire idea. And it'll help him because he had a goal to do something with some agents, and going to give him a boost. All right. So looking at the article, there are a lot of takeaways from this article that I think are really cool. One is like their blueprint. The other one is like their tool house to keep from having so many MCPs contributing on their context layer. They have this searching system for, or call it toolshed, to identify the right things. And then they also have a sandbox. That's another thing I'm working on. not just the VM sandbox. I think one of the things I thought was really cool, they talk about standing up their sandbox in 10 seconds. What I think is interesting is the use case for how the sandbox get leveraged. I don't think, and because the sandbox in itself, you're standing up a VM, it's executing code and then shutting down the VM. Um, for the value that the sandbox brings, I think it will probably be better used if you have more than one case of a sandbox. Like for example, right now I'm just standing up a quick JS sandbox, which is a WASM versus a VM. So it's just running the WebAssembly sandbox and it's executing on the code. That takes milliseconds to stand up. And yes, I'm kind of limited to what code it's writing, but these are, I guess, more shorter lived tasks. So if I have an agent that needs to work in a sandbox, I'm in a TypeScript environment, TypeScript, JavaScript environment. Using OASM makes a lot of sense unless I need something to do that was really intensive. And I have memory limits to that too. I have about 128 megabytes of memory that I can work with. And I don't have like a gazillion threads either. So it's it's stuff that's less resource intensive, but yes, it's less resource intensive, but I get to leverage it a little bit more than something that's super resources intensive like the VM. So I think identifying use cases where the agent can leverage more resources versus less resources and then use them accordingly. I think there's like a marriage between the tool shed and the dev boxes. Again, if you haven't read the article, I encourage you to read the Minnions article. But I think there's a marriage between the toolshed and the dev box because based on the agent and the tools that are applicable for the agent, we can probably determine which dev box to run, right? Do we spin up a VM or do we just need something that's less resource intensive? And in that case, it is something less resource intensive, because I know they say they run through two iterations. Well, if it's less resource intensive, could we run through more iterations? Could we get it exactly the way we need it before we determine, all right, let's keep it moving or send it to the next thing? Um, so those are just the few things I would question in the process. But I did have it run an analysis based on the Claude Code. So we have our Claude Code dev agents, which is like our foundation for writing anything. Um, so the Claude Code Dev Agents, this is publicly available. Anybody can get this. Just go to GitHub, go to my ArtsMC. You can find it on my publicly available GitHub repos. There's Claude Dev Agents. There's also a Codex version of it. So if you're using OpenAI Codex, there's an open Codex version of the same repo. But today we're just going to use Claude Code. Probably any day we're going to use Claude Code, but there is a Codex version that's available. Yeah, so this is the full thing. So what I wanted to do, because this is what I'm using to code today, right? I have a task, drop it in here. Hey, boom, 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 boom. Here's a task, run the start spec, or I run a new feature, and it'll run it from end to end, from the planning all the way to the end, until the code has been executed on. And at the end of it, we have something finished, a finished feature, a finished plan, but a PR is ready. And so I wanted to do a gap analysis to determine, hey, is there anything that you can glean from this article in order for us to be more efficient? And if you do find some efficiencies, what I want to do is I want to test it out today. So I have a repo ready with nothing in it. So here we have our GitHub repo with all the stuff. So I'll open this bad boy up. Here's my profile, my beautiful face. Agent container. So here we have like an empty, it was just a bunch of PRDs in it. We're going to take this PRD and we're going to flip it and turn it into an app. And we're going to use whatever we come up with here. So we're going to take this stuff and we're going to do it live. So I don't even know what's going to happen. I know what my system will functionally do today. I know exactly what it'll do, and I know it'll pop up with the code. But if I make these changes based on this Minnions article, will I see a magnitude of improvement? Not sure. Will it not work as well? And here's what I want to focus. Well, there's two things I want to accomplish with this. One, we're going to talk about how we got here, and then two, the next thing I want to accomplish is if I run this thing with this and it becomes more efficient, then I have a new level of abstraction, and then now we can talk about the next layer of abstraction, which is, similar to here, where I'm just writing in a chat and saying, hey, I got this thing, go figure it out. And I can talk to an agent that understands, which is going to be the next step, an agent that understands how I process building things out, whether I'm processing building out a feature or I'm processing building out a completely new thing. You just run through the steps that I usually run through in order to get something accomplished. So with that, we're going to start. I've already kicked off the analysis, and now it came back with some feedback. Here's where we were talking about it. I kicked it off. It came back. Launched 3 agents. So I like to use this team feature. Claude has a great team feature. I usually, any chance I get, I'll just launch a whole team. Go check something. So one, orchestration and blueprint gaps. So it's going to check the gaps. The other one, tooling and validation. The next one, call it context and knowledge gaps. So let's assess all the gaps we have in our current agentic structure based on this Minnions article and see if we can identify some things. So 5 architecture pillars, blueprint, hybrid orchestration, tool shed, 500 MCP tools, scope per agent. That's crazy. Per agent, 500 MCP tools. So it's interesting because I'm a fan of Monstra and using Monstra. Like you have the same effect there where you have tools, but the tools can be anything. So you have skills as tools or MCP layer as tools, and figuring out what the right one is to use without clouding your context window is what they were able to accomplish here. So I think that's pretty cool. But to figure out how we leverage this for ourselves. The dev box, which is the sandbox environment, spins up in 10 seconds. Again, we can use QuickJS. We can go from 10 seconds to just microseconds. Milliseconds, I'm sorry. Microsecond. What is a microsecond? Oh my god. All right. Validation loop. Loop length, bound CI. Okay, so they have validation loop and scope context. Directory level rules, pre-execution hydration. So we look at my setup and then the Stripe equivalent. So this is what I have so far. Agents, they have 5 custom agents. Well, this is mine. Technically have 24 agents, but we talk about the 5 custom agents here. Minnions, agent node, orchestration. Start phase is my orchestration layer. Yeah, I would say so. It's a combination between, usually if I'm doing like a new feature, you would start with the planning mode, which is spec. Again, if you look here, we have all of the different skills explained. Um, but you would start with the spec mode, and then spec is going to give you a look at what you're trying to build, and then you will go into start phase, which is going to then go through a different layer, but it's going to go through planning and act mode. But they do it differently. So the spec builds the whole thing out, and then when you get in the start phase, it looks at it again, but from the angle of if I ran agents in parallel and if I ran a team that ran agents in parallel, how do you structure out the plan? So it takes the plan that is written plain text, and then it restructures it in a way that works with teams with multi-agent systems. So it tries to be more efficient with its orchestration. So technically, I guess, yes, start phase is the orchestration, but it takes the spec first before it starts the orchestration. And then we have planning, which again, we talk about new feature. New feature is a optimized plan, because new feature is going to run through multiple commands versus just the spec plan. But again, ultimately, this is what you're going to get produced. FRD, which is a functional requirement document. If you look here, we have a bunch of PRDs, which is high level product requirement document. So for any particular product, you have your product requirement document. I think those things can grow a little bit large, so I like to split it up. This would all be one product requirement document that has a bunch of different sections in it. But I said, you know what, why not split it? That's going to make it easier to cut them down into features. So now you have these split product requirements, and then it gets cut into smaller features where we have this execution layer that has all the different features. So it took the PRD, broke it down into features. Again, this is what we're looking at here. New feature is where it does the breakdown. And in the breakdown, we see all these documents. So in our breakdown, in any one of these, we can just go in, and what do you know? All those documents exist. Um, and these documents are just explaining what's going on. So this feature has a bunch of items that need to get checked off. I mean, and it's specific to an agent, right? We're talking about being specific to an agent. I think the problem with a lot of these, again, if I'm saying, hey, open claw, or these autonomous agents that just go out and they just code as is, or for face value, I'll take a agent at face value. I think they're doing better, right? These agents are doing better and better at executing on this. I'll say that. Um, Here's where they're falling short, is that it's not always the most consistent. I don't always get the most consistent outputs, right? Sometimes my outputs are good, sometimes they're not. So hide my display, show view. Shoot, just turn them off. Sometimes they're not great. Sometimes my results just, sometimes they suck. But for the most part, I can't say they're consistent every time. And what this allows me to do by running the stuff that's in the agent folder, uh, in the Claude agent, is it allows me to be consistent every time. So if I say, hey, Claude, use the command or the skill that's in my Claude code, so I don't need you to code, I need you to go talk to my Claude code instance. And in my Claude code instance, it has all of these features, then it will give me more structured outputs. Again, I'm talking about making sure that we're grounding the agents that we're using so we can have consistent outputs. One, two, we can then, once we know the outputs are consistent, we can start improving the quality of those outputs. So now we're going to get the highest quality because we have a control set on how consistent it is every time it puts it out. And so we talk about the new feature. The new feature is an extension of plan mode. And again, on top of that is our spec plan. So it builds it out, and we're building on top of these layers until we get like this really cohesive thing that just is a really high quality. So yes, I can go use Claude Code, but what I'm doing is I'm telling Claude Code, not Claude Code, I'm sorry, I'm telling my OpenClaw, why do they have all these weird names? I'm telling OpenClaw, hey, go leverage this thing inside of Claude Code. Boom. Now we have something way more powerful. I'm not using it yet, but that's going to be later down the line. We're talking about like how we leverage those kind of tools to build out more agentic things. So yeah, that's our context, and then they have their ticket thread context ingestion, memory bank, document hub. I'm big on the memory bank and the document hub. They have scope rules, prehydration. That memory bank, you initialize, again, is back in here. You have your memory bank and your document hub. You, when you start in a new code base, you don't really have to do it because it's brand new. There's nothing there. If we look at what we're going to build here, it's brand new. There's nothing here. There's no memory bank on document hub. But you go to any of my other code bases where there's a bunch of code that exists, the first thing I'm setting up is memory bank. If I don't know anything about the code base, memory bank and document hub. If I know something about the document base and I haven't touched it, about memory bank and document hub. Initiate those because it gives me the architecture of what's been built, and it gives grounding for something new to be built, for features to be extended, for features to be moved. I just had recently a code base where the whole thing, the whole API architecture needed to be flipped and moved into a different folder. So not only did I have to change the architecture, but I had to move it somewhere else. Having this is what allowed that to happen so clean. It was very clean in how it was transitioned. All right, validation. We have hooks that we've put on different skill sets, working with different agents. We've already established some hooks. They have the lint, the local lint loop. It's cool. MCP tools. Right now we have the Anthropic MCP server that we're leveraging for a few things. That's cool. And then they have this tool shed with 500 tools. I think that's going to be a point. If there's anything as I'm scrolling down, it's probably going to be a point for it to leverage. We'll see. CLI is the only entry point. They have Slack, web, ticketing system. I think part of the thing that we're going to build is a agent system that has multiple entry points. But before we even get there, we're just going to talk about For me, the only thing I care about right now is just having the one entry point. I mean, if it talks about it, cool. I'm not really interested in having other entry points. The other thing that Claude Code does is it has a new remote feature. So technically, I would remote somewhere else and I have a different entry point. But sure. All right, so let's talk about the gaps. What do I need to build? Blueprint orchestration engine. It's critical. Stripe has blueprint orchestration is a mix of deterministic nodes, length, format, type check, with agent nodes. Each node has clear entry, exit criteria. The flow is hydrate, implement, local, validation, push, CI, fail fixture, blah, blah, blah. CI round two. So it goes through the two rounds that we talked about. And then create an MR. What do you have? Start phase. Does planning at with parallel spawning, but is entirely agent driven. True. No deterministic validation gap between steps. No boundary retry logic. This I'm kind of funny on. So one of the things that the loop does when you go into the start phase is when I'm telling it what I want it to do at the end of every task. So if we look at the task, there's usually some sort of verification, right? So yes, it's walking through like these sequential steps, but at the end of it, there's usually some sort of verification. And in that case, maybe it's verified JSON, but is usually either going through that or is doing some sort of linting verification. So there are verification steps, but I think because it's reading sequentially, so if you look at the instructions for the the plan step, you would believe that there is no basic just based on the instruction because it's not reading the outputs, it's just reading the instructions and determining if I'm in line with what they're building. And so just reading the instructions, it could determine that I don't have boundaries or logic or, any retry steps. Because if it verifies and it doesn't do it, it'll then start the loop until it verifies it and it passes. That's the reason why we put the verification there, so we can make sure it passes before it moves on to the next thing. And if it does have an error, say, hey, boom, I ran into something. All right, great, go fix it. So I take that with a grain of salt, right? What's it built? Again, this is about grounding. So if it says that and it says it doesn't, I don't have it, is there a way that I can say I can do this consistently and I can ground it? In this current loop, if the last step is validation, right? I don't know if it's always going to be validation on the last step. Complexity small. Let's see, we get into the next one. Reference. I'm not even sure if these are it. Phase 3. Here we go. Boom. So there's things about the steps previously that have to happen. I get that. But notice I don't see the verification anymore. Yeah, it's working on different things. I'm not sure how it verifies it. So in the beginning, we got verification. So I think there's value in maybe we can identify steps as part of the process where we can ground things a little better. All right, so we're gonna reading this. So what you have, we have start phase, plan act, parallel spawning, but it's entirely agent driven, no termination. What to build? New skill called blueprint, or enhance the start phase execute, because start phase has plan and it has execute. So it says enhance execute. I'm leaning towards enhancing the execute, but let's see what we're doing here. So it goes hydrate, which is pulling in the data, implement, actually executing, then run through validation, which probably do like the code reviewer agent. It'll bring in the code reviewer agent. Fix local, so run through fixes. I mean, if it was a front end agent, it'll use UI. If it was back end, it'll use Next.js agent, and then push the CI CD. So run through it, finish, push. I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that at all. I think in our case, what I'm doing is I wait till it gets to the end of a task before I make a push. Fix CID agent, blah blah blah. Create PR. Yeah. By the time I get here, I'm ready to. By the time I get here, I'm usually ready to hit the PR F5. So I think this is interesting. Let's see if we can pull away from that. Got lost validation loop, local validation loop. All right, so the other thing was the local validation loop. Create hooks, post blah blah blah. Yeah, so it's running the linter, detecting steps. This is cool. Gap 3, CI feedback, continuous integration feedback loop with bonded retries. What Stripe has, after push to mains triggers the CI, parse failures apply, fixes, and retry 2 more times. What you have to do, no CI integration at all. There is CI integration, and it depends on the system. Dope. Oh, sorry, it's been a long day. Kind of tired. But I said I was going to do this, so I might run it with it. I might run it without it because I do want to see what happens. Pre-execution context hydration starts. Creative work is determined MCP tools to gather tickets, details. Okay, so real quick, something dope I thought about. One of the things I thought is how can I have a certain way that I go about executing on code. And I came up with this system. I came up with this thing that's ultimately going to build out, it has a 39 features in it, which aren't technically features, but it's going to go through scaffolding, getting packages, running through infrastructure, database, all those things. 39 steps in order to build the app. And once it finishes all 39, we're there. But what got me there, right? What got me to the point where we could figure that out? And I thought, it's not important. The steps aren't important. Is the thought process of the steps. And so, what if I go to Claude, because Claude keep track of all the history of everything I've ever said in the conversation. So, what if we go to our projects and we assess a history, because I'm sure they're in here somewhere. Yeah. What do you know? I could build a skill that assesses the history of the conversations that I'm having and then have it run an analysis. Hey, when I'm thinking about something new, a new feature or something, what, not necessarily what questions do I ask, but can you just run an analysis? Can you determine stages that I go through in the questioning? Can you determine when do I think I should be critical of different things in the questioning, right? And now I have like this analysis of how I think when I go about executing things. And then I can take that analysis as a skill and I can go, you can be more deterministic about this thing. And so I can have an agent equipped with that skill. And I can say, hey, you as an agent are now in charge of going to do this new thing. So now when I want to say talk to an agent, I would talk to this thing that understands how I structure conversation, how I structure conversation around building new features, how I structure around conversation building out applications. It understands how I think specifically. I've already been working on, for the last year, making sure it understands how I code. But now I'm trying to figure out, well, if it understands how I think about coding, it can execute on code even better. So I want to get it better at executing on the code. And again, it's efficient. At this point, it's more efficient at writing the code than I am or ever will be. What it still can't do is determine whether or not it's going in the right direction. So it can do things at a level that I can't, but it can go off in the wrong direction very quickly. So again, back to this, how do we ground it? How do we get it going super fast and staying grounded? Because the problem early on with speed and these breaking the sound barrier and doing these things in these vehicles is that you would go really fast and then it will lift off in the air and then you can't keep it there. So how do we go fast and keep it grounded? I got to teach you to think more like I do and not just go write code. Again, the problem I've identified so far with tools like OpenClaw is that they'll go off, they'll write, and they'll go really fast and then get the flying. So my goal is to ground it. Part of the process is if I'm going to ground the LLMs or if I'm going to ground these agents, I have to first have the infrastructure. And part of the infrastructure is analyzing how I'm using it today with the machine. And on the flip side, if these guys are collecting all this data, then I'm sure they're doing analysis. Why can't I, as an individual who's leveraging the tool, run my own analysis, determine, all right, based on my analysis, how can I get better at this? How can I equip this thing to be more efficient at what I'm doing so I can do more? I don't need to worry about, again, if I'm outpacing anything else, I'm not necessarily worried about being replaced by something. I'm outpacing everything. So as the human who's working with the thing that's working the thing, if I can figure out how to make this thing more efficient and keep making it more efficient, I'm going to generate more value. So I have a vested interest in doing it because I'm generating more value. I'm trying to optimize what I'm doing. So on the flip side, there's more upside value for me. All right. I went on a little tangent there just now. Let me see where we are. You know what I need? I need mods on stuff. I'm actually getting people who join in. So again, what we're working on is we're going to build out this agent container. We have a project that we're going to build. I'm going to explain that a little bit more. But we're kind of starting with the how we got here. And so, yeah, I was running through these steps and probably going to look at that conversation a little bit later. But we're just looking at a gap analysis of what we've built. Looking at the Minion Stripe one-shot coding agent and identifying based on the public library of agents and skills that I put out on GitHub. Based on that, we're trying to determine if there are any gaps that we can fill with our Claude Code instance to see if we can build up some new skills and see if we can close the gap. And if we can close the gap, identifying like the next layer of abstraction. Boom, 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 boom. Gap 5, scope. We got rules, gap 6, tool scoping per agent. I think this one's going to be huge. All agents have access to all tools, no scoping. Agent tool manifests. Add tool section to agent MD. Tool constraints. I do think that would be valuable. I don't think every agent has to have access to every tool. So it'd be good to have tool constraints for our agents. And if anything, it'll with it being more focused, it'll probably get more out faster. Snap messages, website line, insert. Internal ticking. All right, gap 7, multi-entry point. I don't care about entry points. Let's move on. Semantic coding intelligence. Grep Glove. Grip top plugin, AI powered code search, explore agents, broader searches. You actually have a decent coverage. Here with Reptile. The gap is that not says it's not integrated into the hydration pipeline. Okay, that's interesting. So it's giving me the what to build. Cool. My current setup is human in loop. That's exactly right. It's set up for me to be in the loop at every step. You trigger, you choose the. I don't choose the agents. You review, kinda. You push. Stripe system is human at the boundaries, which is something I've been talking about. I think the two most important spaces, or in the near future, the two most important spaces for humans when it comes to the coding, is where you sit. I don't think watching it, going through each step and writing every line and waiting for it to finish a file and then editing the file once it's finished, not important anymore. You're either sitting at the end of something finishing or at the beginning before it starts. Humans at the boundaries. I think that's the thing that makes the most sense today. And so keeping your human, keeping your human, being at the boundaries when the job is done, I think is going to be more critical in the coming future than, constantly figuring out how to analyze the code, because they're going to keep getting better. And the use for that is going to be eliminated at some point very soon. If not, for some people, already been eliminated. The biggest single change to get there, build the blueprint engine, change the terminating validation engine, blah blah blah. Want me to start building these? I could. I'm gonna log this for now. So we're gonna log this. I think this is interesting. I'm gonna come back through, read this, save this conversation. We're gonna take a mental note. Let's get into this, shall we? The actual building. All right, so we're gonna clone this repo. Yobi. Oh man, you're taking a while to spin up. Get out of here. I already got one spent up. Let's go. Let's see. Clear. See what we got in here. All right. Let's go. I got my Pro Max plan. We going high effort on everything. All right, let's talk about this. So, the project. So my buddy, he runs a marketing company. And what's cool is, he came to me and said, "Look, I got a bunch of different agents, and they all have different functionality. Some of them, I want something to handle paid ads. I want something to handle SEO. I want something to handle Facebook ads. I want something for everything." And one of the, he's been working with a team trying to figure this thing out, and they've put out some pretty cool stuff. So without giving away like IP for him, like he just basically told me, "Hey, I want to put together these agents." Then he comes to me and he's like, "All right, Mark, is there any way you can help?" I was like, "Look, bud, I can give you this repo. It can get the agents done pretty quickly. So the thing that you're trying to do, this is an accelerant to what you're trying to do." And he's like, "This is cool. I have no clue what I'm looking at." So we got together. I explained it. And even then it's like, "All right, yeah, but can you show me?" So I was like, "All right, give me a couple of these agents that you're trying to build. Let me see the list." And he gave me the list. There's like 150 agents on there. The two of them that stood out. Let's open up the draw so we can talk about this. Yeah. All right, let's open up a new one. So he has intake meetings. So he comes in, has an intake meeting with the user, future client. Boom. Takes a meeting with his future client. Ew. Mm-hmm. All right. And then Tim team. I say marketing team. It's really just team. All right. So he has a team. They have this meeting. The meeting is summarize and grain. So grain is a cool tool that's going to hold your transcription, and you get these folders. So grain is now the holder of this meeting information. Right. Now what he wants to do is he wants to take this information, this transcript that has now been produced, I can't help it if I wanted to. Couldn't help it even if I could. Couldn't help it if I wanted to. Can't help it. No. All right, let's go. Now you got this transcript, and you want to take this transcript, and he wants to turn it into output, task. Great. So he wants to spin up these tasks as a result of the conversation. Are there things that do that? Sure. That's not what we're talking about here. He wants to spin up the tasks from the grain conversation. And then this middle layer spits out the task. And this task goes into his, I guess, working system that he works on. So the system on the other side, at least right now, is Asana. Asana is the system on the other side. So this is what we got. On one end, we're taking these things, it's coming to Asana, boom. That's the agent's job, right? But then on the flip side, we follow up with the client. We're having a follow-up meeting. I think I want to put, before I put client, the thing I want to establish is that we're having a meeting. So here, meeting. Before the meeting, we want to gather the Asana task. And this is before the meeting, so it's like, I won't put it after, say, because this is grain and then after. But this is before the meeting even starts. Let's go pre-meeting. We want to go into Asana, grab the tasks that were established from here, determine what got done, and craft the meeting agenda. So now I have the meeting agenda, and then the agenda goes into the meeting. Right. So this meeting involves the client and team. The team gets the agenda. Boom. That goes into the meeting. Information to get outputted to, get fancy. That information comes out. Close information. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Boom. Intake. So it's two processes. We have intake. And then we have intake. And then we have agenda. These are the two processes that we're running. Fantastic. So simple enough, but we're going to have agents do this. Now, here's what makes this unique. Boom. So just go circle this. Give me a little solid circle. The background. My background, it ain't squeaky clean. I think the message that you bring. Let's take a long walk around the park after dark. Find the spot for us to spawn conversation. All right, here we go. Boom. Intake agent and agenda agent. That's the simplest form. So agent A will be doing the intake, agent B will be doing that. Now here's the other parts of this thing. So in my conversation and talking to the agent, understanding that this is what we need to build. So the first thing I do is go into a Q&A with Claude, and in my Q&A, say, hey, we're in Q&A mode. Just let's have a question answer session. Let's see, your returns were cloned successfully. Boom, 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 home container. All right, so let's exit and go CD application agent container. Boom. So the first thing I do is say, let's go into. Now I don't know if this is a thing, but I noticed something when I do this. It never looks the right code when I do this. It doesn't look the right code. It just says, hey, Q&A, let's do it. Anything you want to know. Overall, so if I can say, hey, overall, tell me about the project. It's going to go look at a few things and tell me about the project. It's not looking to build anything. And I feel like it's a little faster because it's not really planning to execute anything. So that Q&A process of me just asking questions happens much faster. So one of the first things I do is say, hey, go into Q&A mode. And then it's more of a conversation. I feel like any other time I'm working with the LLM in Claude Code and we're writing something, it usually goes think, respond, and then maybe it's trying to get into some code. I think part of what this does, it goes in plan mode. So there's actually, I could go in plan mode, but it goes in debug mode. So running the Q&A allows it to go into a different mode. And I'm not necessarily looking at code. I just want to get some answers. Give me the short version. Right, so I can say, give me the short version. Boom. Automation system. Task and transfer from grain, run it through AI, and then output a structured Asana task, client, account management, manual building, stack, NX monorepo, Postgres, boom, boom, boom. It knows the stack. It knows what we're trying to do. It knows the 38 build phases that we're going to have to run through. So that's what it knows so far in Q&A mode. So I do like to go in Q&A mode just because I get a little bit more context when I'm in Q&A mode. So we know the job to be done. What I then had to establish from Q&A mode is how do we get to this job? And one of the things I like, let's go, let's add the solid color. And we're going to go here. So here's what we know. When it does the intake and the agent says, hey, I got the transcript. So the first thing it's going to do is going to get a transcript. But then I ask the question, this is assuming the transcript comes from Green. What if the transcript comes from Fireflies or some other service? So, or Otter, right? So if the transcript comes from another service, only thing I know to be sure of is that I'm getting a transcript. So, well, then why not have a first step? What do I need, right? I need a transcript, but I need to normalize it, right? I need, no matter, regardless of where it comes from, I need to have a normal expected result. So what I would do is I would build I would call it just the connector, right? This is my connection. My connector does not care. My connector says I have a resource for grain. I have a resource for Firefly. I have a resource for whatever you want to spin up. Just give me that type of transcript and I will determine what it is and use this connector to normalize it, because I need to have same inputs, same outputs. So again, this isn't just, if I was just looking at, here's where, again, main principle, stay grounded. If I was just looking at saying, hey, OpenClaw, go do this thing and just do it every week, great. I don't know if it's going to be able to do it under the same conditions every week. So what is important? How do I ground it? What am I using? So one of the things that we're going to be using, we're still going to leverage agents, but one of the things we're going to be using is a system. So part of the question that goes into, what are you building? What system do you use? Is like, all right, well, what system, given the problem that we're going to face, what system is going to allow me to leverage this? Well, what I found so far, there's quite a few systems, but Mostra is one I'm a fan of. So I'm going to use Mostra. Mostra allows me to build agents that I can work with in the UI or within a terminal, with any other interface, with the chat interface. It's portable. It can go with me anywhere. So if I'm going to have OpenClaw talk to anything, I'll have it talk to a Mostra agent. And it can connect directly to the Mostra server or Mostra MCP layer. So our transcript, our connector. Great. So now we have our connector. Our transcript's coming in. We normalize this, right? So grain brings the transcription in. We now normalize this transcription. And we store it on a database. Because part of what happens is, regardless of whether it's a come on, Mark. Regardless of whether it's a chat interface or a web interface, what we're trying to do is hold the state of the thing. Because if we ever lose, we take this normalized state and we lose it and we come back, it's gone. The state of the thing was never held. So we're going to have a database to hold the state of the thing. So again, part of the conversation, establish what do you need? You need a database. This is us going back and forth. I'm establishing all the things I want to build, how I want to build it. We're going through this conversation. These are the things we're figuring out. So I want a database. Well, once I have a database and I save it to the database, well, what is actually making that thing happen? Actually, the database wouldn't go there. What makes that thing happen? I need some sort of API to talk to the database. So I normalize it, run the API. The API stores it to this database. The API is doing a lot, right? The API is talking to the database. The API is talking to the UI. The API is talking to the terminal. Any space where we're grounding something, that's where the conversation is happening. So we have our database, probably have a Mostra layer, right? What else do we have here? We might have our terminal, all the layer of interfacing. Okay, so this thing is really talking to everything. Great. Now it's accounting for it. So it's talking to all these different things, and this API is able to do this. But another thing this API is doing, let's put them all back. Put them back. Oh, crap. part of what it's doing, so now that it gets here, it normalizes everything. It's going to generate these tasks where it's stored in the database. Thing about these tasks is right now, I'm assuming it goes into Asana. But the same way as grain, what if that layer changes? What if it's no longer going to Asana? What if it's going to something else? Well, what do I then need? I need another connector. And this thing says it doesn't care what layer it goes to, right? It's going to come out with tasks. So my connector comes up with these tasks based on whatever it is, or it'll be something set in the middle. I really get these normalized tasks, so it's actually this guy. Get out of here. Now you have the normalization coming out. Jeez, come on now. Come on now. Get my arrows right. Come on now. Normalize. And then we're going to have a connector. Hey, how you doing? Boom. Connector out the door. And then we're driving into another tool like in Asana. So low level, that's what's happening. Get into more specifics. This is kind of what we're asking for. Again, I could have just put it out there. Hey, prompt it. And I might not get this kind of consistency. But I'm able to get it now. All right, so now that we got this consistency here, we know the system that we're going to build. We have these agents, we have these PRDs that understand, hey, this is the thing you're building right here. It has these layers. And then I thought, there's another opportunity for them. On top of all of this, the one thing OpenClaw doesn't have is like, how do I secure everything that's happening here? And OIDC is probably the best way. So it's like, all right, well, what if I built an SSO that we secure with OIDC? Then all of these things could interface with this layer, whether you're in the database, whether you're in the Master UI or the terminal, you can interface with this SSO layer. So at the end of it, I was like, hey, come up with the SSO layer. We need an off piece that's completely separate from this thing. And then all your systems kind of work together. And from there, this is what we've come up with. And again, the same rules that are going out for this apply here in the agenda. So we basically took the scope of this for the intake, saw what it looks like for the agenda, and now we have two of these guys. Boom. The whole thing has been architectured, and then it comes up with these PRDs. And now we can execute on all these steps. That's the exciting part, right? The boring part, which I guess is part of the exciting part. The boring part is that it's running through all these. So we know all this stuff is ready. 38 build phases are ready to go. So here's what I would do. I actually have it a little higher. Where are you? Is it here? Job queue index. Yep, here it is. There we go. So my job queue index is kind of managing all this. All right, so now we're gonna run execute. Boom. All right, so we're gonna have this bad boy spin it up. We're gonna execute on it. It's gonna run them concurrently. It's gonna analyze the file, the index file. We're gonna have a PM at the top of it on the index, and this bad boy is going to run. So it's analyze it. We have this index file that we've come up with. So this is our master table that our PM is going to be holding. And we know when we get here, it's going to run 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 22 all at once. This one runs 7, 24, and 32 at the same time. This one runs, right. So all of this stuff, we know what's blocking what, and we can run certain things at the same time. Let's see. Maybe it's here. Block by. So yeah, we're blocking. So when stuff is getting blocked, we can only work on it. So we know 0, everything has to wait because of the blocking. So we know it's getting blocked, so everything has to wait for that. Boom, we know that has to wait. So we can see portions where things have to wait and where we can just chug through it. We have some critical paths. All that's in here. Man, I love this thing. Look, first wave, this is what we're hitting on. Next wave, this is what we're hitting on. It produced these documents. So if we're working in this current Claude system, the current Claude system is what produced these documents. I have a spec writer agent that just goes and writes the spec. That's his job. And it writes these well done specs. Anything that we needed to resolve, it fix all of our conflicts. All the things that we needed to figure out, we figured out. And we got ourselves a for loop. Right. That is the summary of the Ralph Wiggums. Is just running the for loop. Get busy. We're gonna give it permission to do whatever it needs. And this bad boy's gonna run. Now, look, I'll be honest, I don't think it's a flex when people go, man, I ran my Claude agents all night and I woke up to a finished product. I don't think it's a brat. I think if you can become more efficient, because what likely happened, it ran all night because you were running things in sequential order. If you become more efficient and you can train these things, you can figure out how to run more things concurrently in parallel. We're running more stuff at once. You can take a task that would have taken hours and run all night. But if you could figure out how to divide it correctly and run through these loops, now we're taking something that was running all night and we can turn it into something that was maybe running for an hour or running 30 minutes because we've cut it down by that much by trying to be more efficient, by trying to set these rules that are grounding the system. If we can do that, we can cut the time it takes, and running all night is no longer the flex. right? Working super hard, saying, I spent 16 hours a day grinding and working. That's no longer the flex. How efficient can I be with my time? Because if I can do that, I can maximize that time and I can be absolutely efficient. Then, if I work 16 hours at that kind of pace, oh, I'm an absolute monster. So if I can have this thing running and I can do what it could have taken 8 hours in the next 30 minutes, then what can I do to turn into an absolute monster? We have UI teams that are going to be running, terminal teams running, monster teams running, teams, multiple teams, infra, and one single infra team because it's only going to be for a couple of tasks. It knows we're talking singular versus plural. It already knows. It knows when it's going to be idle. It knows when it's going to be used. It looks at the critical paths. It's already assessing all of this information before we even get started. I thought the execution thing was already in there. The file already exists. Yeah, come on. Oh, scheduling. I don't know if it's necessarily going to need scheduling, but sometimes I let the AI go and schedule things if it wants to. Ooh, what just happened here? Do you want me to edit? Yes, do your thing, man. Do your thing. Again, I don't necessarily have to open up VS Code anymore. I mean, I'm gonna let this thing rock. Will I open up VS Code? Yes, because I am the human at the boundary, not in the loop. I'm at the boundary. I'm at the beginning where we're planning and we're working through all this. Look how much stuff that we had to get through just to get to the part where we're starting to execute on code. We had to go through all of this. I'm sorry. We had to go through all of this just to get to a space where we're executing on code. And we didn't just slouch through it. There's a lot of work that's put in here. We have a job queue. We have the index that's going through everything that could possibly happen. We've gone through every scenario. What's going to interrupt what? What does everything look like? What do you mean you went through what everything looks like? We can go to the very top. Look at the documents. Look at the FRD. What do we produce? We're reviewing all of this. So I took the time to just read through, not all of it, but a very large chunk of it. But we know exactly what happens. The test cases, the unit cases, we have Gherkin specification document that in plain English can be converted into the unit tests. Technical requirements, what the project structure is expected to look like at the end of it. All of it's been laid out. Everything has been laid out. This is usually about 60K worth of tokens. So each one of these features will go through about 60K of tokens. So for each one of these, you can do the math, right? Everything has been vetted. Everything has been. If you do that work here, if the human is at the boundary and you're doing the work on the front end, like the real work, then once you got into the point where it's executing, you're not looking at it. It's already been vetted. I'm a little upset at skipping my PM data hooks. Kind of like my hooks. All right, so now we're gonna go into task execution. and I'm gonna disappear. It's gonna write. It's gonna write its butt off, and we're gonna progress through each one of these bad boys. So we're gonna go through the phases. It's gonna progress through. Here is where something like a open call would sit in, because instead of me watching that progress, there's some sort of agent who's watching over this process. So once I know it's efficient and I know it works and it's going to get through A to Z and it's going to do it efficiently, then my next step is to build like that open call agent that can watch the whole flow. So then that open call agent is going to sit right here and watch the flow. We get to a we get to a breaking point or a point where it's like, all right, I finished this. You want me to get on to the next thing? Yes, I want you to get on to the next thing. I don't have to say it. I have something else that's waiting for the feedback. It says it because it understands how I think and how I processes it. So it can go, okay, this is what Cloud Code told me. Boom, move on to the next step. I have grounded work that it's doing. Everything is grounded at this point. So now I don't have to sit here and do all the commands. I have this thing that understands how I think. Right now it doesn't exist, but it will. I have this thing that understands how I think, and it's going to continue moving forward because it knows how I'm going to go through this code, and it's going to get to the end for me. Right now, that's us. We are the human that is constantly interjecting as this thing comes through. Actually, I don't have to do that. Do your thing. Yeah. Set edits on. Where's the bypass? Escape to interrupt. I'm gonna do your whole thing. Yeah. So we're gonna let this bad boy run, and it'll run from beginning to end. And again, this is a project that started with nothing. It had nothing in it other than the PRDs, and the PRDs came from the conversation. So we have the conversation with the LLM. We kind of determined what we're going to build. So we knew that we were going to build these agents. We kind of figured out how we were going to build the agents and what order. And then we came up with these PRDs at the very top level, which were great, but the PRDs only solve a part of the problem. If I said, hey, go make all of the task lists with these PRDs, it would have made a task list out of these PRDs. But it only solved part of the equation. I need things grounded. Again, there's about 60 on average, there's about 60K with each one of these feature documents. But these feature documents are so specific, it doesn't leave a lot of room for ambiguity. It's like, look, this is the thing I want to build. Go build this thing. This is coming from our Claude dev agents. I'm tracking where all of this stuff is. So as you're executing on this, you're understanding, hey, he's going from this thing right here. He's grabbing this stuff. He's grabbing this stuff. He's connecting here. He's running these commands. And at the end, we get a finished product. I hope. So at the end of this, we get this finished product. That's running these same commands here, but we've started with nothing. Only thing you've seen me do is run the command. It's running it, and it's going to loop through all these. Right now, it's in like this mode where I don't know why. I'm trying to get out of this debug mode and bypass the options. Um, yeah, so I wanted to run through the whole thing, and at the end of it, I'll have a finished application from starting with nothing. From starting with nothing, we have a finished application that will just work because it planned out everything. Unit tests, all of it, it's all there. Man, what in the world? Actually, you know what? I'm gonna pause it real quick. I should finish this task. And then we're going to exit. Zoom. Hold on. I kind of want this thing to just go. There we go. All right. Because I don't want to keep going back and forth and checking it. So we're going to have this bad boy go. And again, I want to sit at the boundary. I don't want to sit in the loop. Let me sit at the boundary. And this thing going is going to allow me to sit at the boundary. So here's what we're going to do. Oh, it's already done. So we can see a task has already been completed. We're at 0, 0. It's letting me know that this part of the task has been completed. It's going to move on to the next thing. And it's going to start on the next phase. So what I'll do is I'm going to have this thing kick off the rest of these phases, and then we'll come back probably tomorrow, and we'll talk about what happened, how it executed. But it's literally we're one-shotting this whole system, and it's going to build these agents out, and it's a pretty dope experience. So when you start building the layers on top of this, it gets pretty cool. And again, when you've taken the time to do this, right? You've taken the time to do this, and you become more efficient with your time. And let's say this thing only takes, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours. Instead of going to bed and waking up to your code being finished, you can start working on the next project because you got something you've abstracted yourself away to a point. You start working on the next thing. So it's pretty dope. I already got my next project. I can tell you right now, I got these bad boys. I'm working on. I have a treadmill that we got off of Facebook Marketplace for like $100, which is like one of these old gym treadmills. So we're actually pretty good. And I'm like, you know what? What if I wanted to turn it into a smart treadmill? Before, there was a time where I had thought about that. I was like, that's impossible. I don't know anything about hardware, connecting hardware. That world does not exist anymore. If I want to make hardware, I can go make hardware. If I want to connect it, we're living in a time where anything that I want to achieve, it is possible today. So I started a chat to figure out what is the equipment I needed. It let me know what I need to add to my Amazon cart, what it does, how it talks to each other. I have all the stuff that I need to add this to my Amazon cart and create this thing that's in my brain. It's like, all right, now I want to create this indoor running application, attach something to my shoe. How do I attach something to the treadmill so I can determine the height of the treadmill? All of this stuff is possible today. So anything you want to create in your brain, I would encourage you, is more than possible. You can create anything that's on your mind. There was a time where, I was told not only would I never be an engineer, but I would never be able to do something like this. And now if it pops up in my brain, I can do it. I just never believed that there was a limitation to something I can think of that I didn't have access to, that I couldn't just do. Even if I didn't have access to it, the thing that's on my brain is, what if it was possible? And if I can think, what if it was possible, then I can make it possible. And if I can make it possible, then I can make it. So I would encourage you, everyone who's out there who's doing anything, if you can think it, you can make it possible. And keep encouraging folks. If you have a cool idea, you want to leverage AI. Hopefully these lessons are, hopefully you can leverage a lot of the tools that I've given away.